All right, talk about an encore performance. We couldn't even wait until Thursday, so we're coming at you with a special edition of the 24th Floor. All eyes right now on Memphis after some polarizing comments from renowned sports personality Stephen A. Smith, questioning why star players don't seem to want to play for the Grizzlies. Yeah, you can imagine it sparked a ton of reaction, even from number 12 himself, Ja Morant. We're breaking it all down with native Memphian and former Mr. Basketball Tony Harris. He's sitting by my side. The 24th Floor starts right now. Hit that music. All right, so at the end of our last episode, we talked about how Memphis is a basketball city. I haven't been here that long, but I've been here long enough to know that. And man, if this week hasn't proven that point out loud and clear, people are showing up in full force to defend the 901. Joining me today is a true Memphis hooper through and through. Easy to say, former McDonald's All-American, East High School legend, Tennessee Vol, and proud son of Binghamton, Tony Harris. Tony, thanks so much for joining us.
Man, thank you, Ruben. Glad to be here, man. It's such a pleasure.
Man, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk a little bit about, before we get into too much, you are rooted in Memphis. Let's just set the stage with how rooted you are in Memphis.
Absolutely. Born and raised here all my life. Been here 40 plus years. Played high school basketball here at East High School. Like I said, went to the University of Tennessee, got married, raised a family here, and still here now.
All right, so now you know he's all Memphis now, so let's go ahead and dive into today's big idea.
Marcus, listen, I know y'all got to go. You gonna tell folks why nobody wants to be in Memphis, or you want me to do it?
Oh no! For a player like me, I just don't think that the league, like, for guys like me, I love to be in Memphis. I embrace it, but you got to identify those guys, right? And it's not that simple, especially a younger guy to identify that wants to be in Memphis. I want to hear you say, why you think
the people in Memphis is a great sports town, great fans, great people. Yeah. But there's an element there where cats like Jimmy Butler and others don't feel it's the safest environment. I'm talking to the local authorities in Memphis. You got to clean some of that stuff up because it's dissuasive to NBA players. They have talked about it. I know they've told me.
You heard it there first. Of course, many people did not appreciate Stephen A. Smith's comments, including Grizzlies star point guard Ja Morant, who took to social media immediately to indirectly fire back. He called out Stephen A. Smith and the First Take show for talking about the city of Memphis instead of focusing on the current NBA Finals, which is true. He also shut down any notion that he's leaving Memphis after the recent Desmond Bane trade. Now, it wasn't over there, though. Stephen A. Smith responded to Ja Morant, saying his original comments were about the NBA Finals, but that the Grizzlies became a part of that conversation because of the trade and of course, of Ja's upcoming contract extension. He hinted he could reveal more about why some players avoid Memphis, but left it up to Ja, saying, quote, "Your call." Ja Morant then posted a cryptic response after Stephen A.'s comments. This is back and forth for real, saying, quote, "Don't cry for me when the war is over." The message suggests he's staying strong amid criticism and possibly hinting that people shouldn't show support later if they're not standing with him now. A lot to dissect here today on the special edition of 24th Floor. The whole reason we're doing the show is to talk about why this all came about. So your initial thoughts, Tony, on all of that, and that's a lot to think about.
Wow, that is a lot to think about. But my first initial thoughts, to be honest, it was, why did that comment come out after Desmond Bane got traded? So, of course, I've talked to some people in my circle, and, we went back and forth on what we thought. And my initial reaction was, because it was a blockbuster trade, Desmond Bane left, maybe he doesn't want a big superstar to come to Memphis. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's trying to take, Memphis, because sometimes Stephen A., he can be controversial, but, in this moment, it's not to the favor of the people. And so I know he's a big-time New York Knicks fan.
Absolutely. So you're saying there could be some ulterior motives theoretically in this point in time. Now obviously, the trade is what sparked all this, right? And there has been the conversation, hey, some of these guys in these smaller markets are homegrown players, and that's why they're okay with staying. But the reality is, when you think about even Ja's response, as a homegrown kid, as a homegrown man, I should say at this point in time, do you feel like that's a fair take, or or is Memphis a great place to be no matter what?
I think both. It's a fair take. Ja, he's from a small town in South Carolina, so I think that's why he fits so well in the Memphis market. Because of that he can relate. People can relate to him. He can relate to the people. So Ja loves it here. He's comfortable here, and so being from here, when you hear reactions like that, we do have a lot of great things in this city that people seem to overshadow or overlook. I've done a lot with my nonprofit, into the community. You got tourists from all over, that comes to visit Graceland, to come to visit the Civil Rights Museum. So Memphis has a lot to offer.
So would it be fair to say, as somebody who's played a ton of basketball, you're from the city, you've got a lot of relationships with former NBA players, even current NBA players, you have a son who's probably headed to the NBA at some point in time. As a man who's so embedded in this, how do you take Stephen A's comments about the city of Memphis?
Like I said, I just take it as if it was an agenda behind it. I took it, like if it was maybe a low blow, to the city of Memphis. But hey, Memphis, we're known as the grit and grind city, so we're going to shrug it off. We're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to keep doing the things what we have to do to change that narrative of the city.
When you're talking to your circle, your inner circle, because all of us have then reached out to people we know and said, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" The first thing I thought about when I heard that was, I wanted to ask, how much time has Stephen A. spent realistically in Memphis? Did you come down for a game and hop a flight right after, or have you spent actual time? Do you know people in Memphis? That was my initial thought. What was your initial thought about just him himself making that comment? Yeah,
he wasn't really relatable to the city, and exactly what you said. Maybe he hasn't been around, because a lot of Southerners in this part, are a lot of rich, loving type people. We put our arms around anybody who comes to this city. I've been so many places, around the country, and there's not hospitality like it is in Memphis. So of course, when you hear that initially, if you're from Memphis, if you're raising a family in Memphis, it's going to be a little offensive.
Yeah, I would say a little offensive is a nice way to put it. He definitely just said it, and I wonder if he didn't want to take it back, because I did see today he kind of walked that back a little bit, talking about, hey, Memphis is a great place, I've got friends there, and yada, yada, yada. But at that point, the damage is kind of done, because, how do you walk that back after you've already kind of put your foot in your mouth about a whole city?
Yeah, well, I think he's trying to make those steps and do that. But what I would do if I was Stephen A, I would try to, take a few visits to the city. Try to engage with the people. Try to really come in and see what this city is really all about. I know Stephen A. He has a lot of pride. Yeah. He has an ego at sometimes, but I really feel like if he come and engage with the people, he'll really have a different narrative of what he thinks about the city of Memphis.
And we don't want to sugarcoat anything. Then we have to be real, right? You have to keep it 100 when you're doing this stuff. There is crime in Memphis, so there may be some validity to the point he's trying to make, but maybe not the way he made it. Would you feel like that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And then it was another thing. He said also that he knows players.
Yes.
You may know some players, but that doesn't mean every player in the NBA feels the way that you feel, or those group of players that you're referring to. So I don't think it was a fair statement, because that's just like saying, hey, this whole group of people, when only actually you're really talking about a handful of people.
Yeah, you may know one or two people who don't have any desire to come to Memphis, and that could be for a number of reasons, including the perception of the city. And let's be clear, every city has their own perception problem in and of themselves, right? Like cities, like you think New York, you think rude people, right? That's what you think, right? That's what we've all been kind of programmed to think. So, but the perception isn't always the reality, and I think that's where the biggest disconnect comes here for people who live in this area, who work in this city, who work in this town, and they think, why would you say that about my city?
Absolutely. You got a lot of blue-collar people who've been there all their lives, and, who really, work hard to make this city a great place. And so those are the people that we're referring to. Of course, it's no city is perfect.
Nope.
You got, like you said, New York, you got cities such as New Orleans and Detroit, not to throw them under the bus of anything, but there's crime in each one of those cities, even in LA. So my thing was, why was Memphis targeted, at this certain specific time?
I'm glad you said that. It's almost like we'd planned it, even though we didn't, just so we're clear, because we're going to touch base on all those things you just mentioned, the other NBA cities, why Memphis was targeted, some of those things. We got to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to dive into what state and city leaders had to say about this as well. Everybody's very interested and has their own perspective on this take. We'll be right back.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24+. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24+. The 24+ TV app, streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24+, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
It's how big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24+. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24+. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24+. Download free on your TV now.
All right, welcome back to this special edition of the 24th Floor. We're joined by Tony Harris here, well-known and well-respected hooper from the 901. We're going to continue this discussion about around crime and the NBA and some of the conversation that's been sparked due to Stephen A. Smith's comments. Now, let's look at how some of the state and city leaders have responded to Stephen A. Smith's comments about players not wanting to come to Memphis. Memphis Mayor Paul Young responded to Stephen A. Smith's comments by defending the city, pointing out that crime is significantly down in 2024 and 2025, and that Memphis is making real progress. He invited skeptics, including Smith and Jimmy Butler, to visit and see it for themselves. He also praised Ja Morant for standing up for Memphis, saying Ja's heart is what truly makes him a part of this city. Now, we've also heard reactions from all corners of the city, everyone from the Greater Memphis Chamber, Senator Brent Taylor, and Grind City Media's Jessica Benson, to former U of M hooper and ESPN analyst Trey Draper. Even Southern Heritage Classic founder Fred Jones has weighed in at this point in time. You can see some of their tweets on your screen, all showing signs of support. The message from all of them is pretty clear. Yes, Memphis has work to do, but no, it's not the doom and gloom picture that Stephen A. seems to want to point out and paint for the city. It's interesting that we were talking about this. You just mentioned we were going to break, Tony, that we were talking about Memphis isn't the only NBA city that's got crime. So we did a little digging, and this graph here on your screen kind of gives you an idea of where Memphis ranks when you talk about crime in the NBA cities. And you can see New Orleans is actually number one on that list, followed by Detroit, and then Memphis comes in third. Fourth, there is Cleveland. Now, the NBA city with the least amount of crime, and I don't even know if this is, you can even count it, is Toronto. Toronto's on the map. But as we're talking about NBA players and crime in the city and the picture that was painted, we hope that that graph kind of puts it in a little bit of perspective. And real quick, it's important to note that those numbers are 2 years old. Okay. And the crime in Memphis has dropped in the last 2 years. So those numbers will be better than they even are on that graph right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that that graph was shown to at least show the people of Memphis, hey, we're not at the top. It's crime everywhere, and we know that. And so, like I said, at the end of the day, we have good people here. You can't put everybody in one category, and we can't just put that stain on Memphis like that. Yeah.
Now, I know that we've been speaking kind of off camera, and you are so tied to Memphis. I know you even have a relationship with Mayor Paul Young. You guys have known each other for a few years as well. How'd you feel about the mayor stepping up so quickly? And can I just say, these responses, Stephen A. Smith has never had this quick a response. The whole city stood up within minutes.
Well, it just, it exemplifies what Memphis is about. Everybody's standing together. This is the part of Memphis that a lot of people may not know about if they don't come and engage in the city. We love Memphis, and so it was great to see see, our mayor, Paul Young. He's a good friend of mine, high school classmate, college classmate as well, to step up, and defend the city. And, rightfully so, he's supposed to,
Yeah. So I will say Senator Brent Taylor's response wasn't as positive. It was more, it had a lot more political juice behind it, I would say. Definitely was talking about making changes and other changes and holding people accountable. But it was interesting to see people from all across responding, so that obviously that message or that word had gotten out enough where people on both sides and in all areas seemed to feel compelled to tune in and chime in this situation. I will say that even with all of this, there has still been talk plenty of times of big major stars coming to Memphis, including Kevin Durant at one point. So there can't be too much of a deterrent when stars do still continue to come to this city.
Absolutely. And the guys who've already been in the city, you got guys who are still here in the city. Tony Allen, Zach Randolph, these guys love the city of Memphis because Memphis embraced those guys. Memphis, they love the guys that are here, that are real and who embrace them and call this city their home. And so, like we said, man, we're just going to do whatever we can as Memphians to fight that narrative of this is not the place to be.
Yeah, and I think it's important to always have the both sides of every conversation. We've shown the crime statistics as where Memphis ranks among other NBA cities, and Memphis is still up in the top 5. If you want to label it that. Not the worst on the list, but definitely not the best on the list.
Right.
But there seems to be changes coming, and I do think that's kind of been the part of the conversation that was lost in the Stephen A. conversation, because he did bring up a point. Hey, there's crime. Maybe people who make a lot of money, stars, don't want to live there because they think something might happen to them, right? That was his point he was trying to make.
Right.
But then what's your contention for people living in Cleveland and Detroit and,
Absolutely.
Philly and, all these other places that have stars in it as well?
Yeah, that's right. And so, people are wondering why. Inquiring minds want to know why. He didn't hit on that.
Yes.
And so, because he didn't hit on that, that's why it's looking like, the comment was biased and there was an agenda, behind that comment.
And it's important to note some of these cities, New Orleans, Cleveland, Detroit, they have NFL teams as well. Some of them have other professional sports teams as well. So you're talking about more stars. Now, their NBA stars may not be as dominant or predominant as some of the other cities. Maybe in Detroit, you don't have as many big names as you would in some of the other cities, but you've still got Detroit Lions players there.
Absolutely.
In Cleveland, you still got Cleveland Browns players there. So there are these other cities have big name stars, not just in the NBA, and none of that was mentioned.
You're right. That's a great point. I didn't think about that. So, that's a big point. So when someone makes a comment like that about your city, you're supposed to stand up. You're supposed to defend it, and, from every different angle. So at the end, our solution is we're going to get Stephen A. hopefully to retract everything that he said about Memphis.
I think the best solution, and we're looking at some video of some of these other cities who have crime issues just like any other city. I've lived in several cities at this point. We lived in Indianapolis for a short period of time, and I can tell you right now, the perception of that city is, hey, it's sunshine and roses. And it is, as long as you stay away from certain parts of the city. And we learned that whenever I was, doing news in Indianapolis. I had to learn the hard way, okay, there's areas you do have to definitely avoid because they're high crime areas. So to pinpoint Memphis, definitely had a jaded feel to it for sure.
Absolutely, I would definitely agree with that. Yep.
So I think the best thing we could do is get Stephen A. down to Memphis.
Yeah, we can get Stephen A. down to Memphis and chop it up with him for a little bit. I think that'll be awesome. Take him a few places, take him to some barbecue spots, and just really show him the hospitality and how Memphis people really are.
I think that's one of the biggest things that you mentioned so far today that I think gets kind of lost in this is he is a big New York guy.
Yeah.
Loves New York, right? That's his thing. The culture between New York and here in the South, man, it couldn't get much, it couldn't get farther apart,
it's
right?
It's different, yeah.
And so what he may think about culture-wise, it might shock him to be down here.
Yeah, I think so. New York, big city, flashing lights. It's the Big Apple, so he's used to that. And so you don't have that when you get down here to Memphis. We have other attractions, like we do. We have other things, that you can do in Memphis. And so I think, from the culture and the difference, because of that, it's maybe not mirrored as like a New York City, or maybe may not have the things that New York City have, but doesn't mean that we don't have anything to offer, or we're not a city that people wants to come visit. Man, I know people who have moved from bigger cities, from Dallas, from Los Angeles, and came to Memphis, and settled down and had a family and say, hey, I want to retire here.
Yeah. Not to put you on blast or anything, but I do know you're deep in the basketball world. And you have a lot of friends, former and current NBA players. Without naming names, because Stephen A. didn't name any names, he says there's players that don't want to come here. And I think you feel like that's not true, that you know people who do.
Yeah, I absolutely know several people, actually. I played in the McDonald's All-American game, so I know a lot of current NBA players. I know a lot of former NBA players. I know a lot of NBA players who have come to the city, who I've spent time with, and we hung out and things of that nature. But, I'm not about to get on my Instagram and say, hey, look, so-and-so here, but, that narrative is definitely false. I know a lot of guys, who actually, and let me say this, a lot of guys who were in the NBA who were in the front office in Memphis and loved it here.
Yeah. I think that says a lot, because people,
absolutely,
again, you just hear one side of a narrative and you start to think it might be it. We're not done yet. We got to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at what the Grizzlies and what Tony have been doing in the community to help change the narrative around the Stephen A. narrative thing that he's been saying. I don't even know if we can call it comments anymore. We'll be right back right after this.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24+. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24+. The 24+ TV app. Streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24+, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
That's how big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24+. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24+. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24+. Download free on your TV now.
All right, welcome back. Ruben Diaz, Tony Harris back with you with this special edition of 24th Ward. We're talking all things Memphis, Grizzlies, the city, the love for the city. We've talked about Stephen A. Smith's comments. We talked about Ja Morant's response. We've even discussed what state and city leaders have had to say as well. But now let's take a look at some of the work that the Grizzlies themselves have been doing. And we want to talk about what you've been doing in the city as well to change the narrative about Memphis. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff they're doing, some of the work that they do in the community. You're talking about the different coat drives. There's Zach Randolph right there. I know you mentioned him earlier. Yep. You're talking about the coat drives that they do, the food giveaways they're involved in, just the community service hours that they do. These guys are constantly in the community.
Yes.
Would you be in the community if you didn't feel safe in your community?
No.
So I think it's important, when you watch some of the work, the backpack giveaways, just being involved with kids and with people within the community, how that impacts the community itself. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you do a lot of work in the community as well. Talk us through a little bit about how you've seen the community involvement help change the city from within?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, my nonprofit, Tony Harris Basketball Inc. You know, we do a lot of after-school programs. We do a lot of backpack drives and giveaways, camps, clinics, and things of that nature. And so what I've noticed was that it brings the city closer together. You know, so what the Grizzlies are doing, and you know what I'm doing with my organization, and various other people with nonprofits are doing, and getting out here and engaging, you know, with the community. What I've seen, you know, from up close and with the bird's eye view, is that, you know, people from all different walks of life are coming together, and they're bonding, and that's what makes Memphis so special.
You know, I have noticed, I've only been there about a year and a half, but I have noticed there are a ton of nonprofit organizations in this city. There are a lot of people putting boots on the ground to help make changes. And hats off to you, because you're one of them.
Yeah, thank you. I started my nonprofit back in 2010, and so I really wanted to make a difference with the youth. I still want to stay affiliated with basketball, but what made my nonprofit so special is because we weren't really just offering basketball. We were offering, because other kids that are in inner cities, they probably were interested in something else. You know, they might look at Ruben and say, hey, I want to do what Ruben do one day, or
just don't take my job. I still got bills.
That's right. But you know, you got guys that we offered so many different things, etiquette classes, you know, for girls and for boys, and you know, how to talk on camera. You see so many athletes, they get on camera, they might not know how to speak, you know, eloquently or whatever, or professional. And you know, we do a lot of stuff, you know, like that just really brings the community together. And so Memphis, yeah, it's a place where when you have so many people who have a lot of nonprofits, they want to see change in the city. So I can see if there wasn't a lot of nonprofits. It's a ton of them.
Would it be fair to say, we only got about a minute left, but would it be fair to say that although a lot of the credit goes to Memphis leaders with the crime reduction, I think it'd be fair to say a lot of that credit also needs to go to the nonprofits and people like you who are putting boots on the ground to help get kids involved in activities to help keep them out of crime. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. We definitely thankful for Paul Young, the Mayor Paul Young, and our leaders for doing what they do, but also for us who have nonprofits, because we are trying to work on the inside. We are in the communities, we're in the inner cities, and we're doing these type of things, you know, to make Memphis a better place.
You are the man, Tony. Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of 24th Floor. I'm going to let him go on about his day. He's got other things to do besides talking to me all day. But thank you for joining us on this complicated topic. Your words of experience, and your experience in the 901 help put all of this into a very realistic perspective that I think everybody can appreciate. Got to take a short break real quick. When we come back, a final thought on this war of words. We'll be right back.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24 Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24 Plus. The 24 Plus TV app, streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24 Plus, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
How big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24 Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24 Plus. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24 Plus. Download free on your TV now.
Nobody really expected him to be what he has become on this team. And that is one of the Iron Men, quite frankly. He has played in all 79 games, and he started in 74 of them. And so when you have a guy like that, he's been nothing but dependable pretty much all year. And when you have a guy who's dependable pretty much all year, you've got to find folks to fill in his space. Jalen has been arguably the best wing defender on the team the entirety of the year. He's had so many games this season where he has been tasked with defending the best player on the team or the best perimeter player on the other team. He's had some phenomenal defensive performances, shutting down the likes of Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. And even when they've had really good games, they still had to contend with Jalen being in their hip pocket.
I wanted Michael Jordan to come. I wanted Scottie and them to come. You know, they was winning championships in my town. It'd have been great for them to come pass out toys and turkeys and things, but they didn't do it. Not saying now that it ain't a reason why I shouldn't, because they not from where I'm from.
Right.
So it's on me to go ahead and change that narrative. It's on me to go back and get hope. And that's what I do, man, even till this day, man. From Maine to Spain to China, Carolina. If it's a hood near you, TA gonna be there.
So it's always good being back in Memphis. Just, you know, it's home, and being back always feels like that.
It's actually really the more disturbing thing I saw this week. Not really comforting, especially if you're a Grizzlies fan. Grizzlies getting into a little shoving match against the Utah Jazz. Desmond Bane goes full two-arm shove into Santi Aldama, and would look like a pretty heated argument on the sideline, on the bench, and during a timeout. Grizzlies trying to hold the ship together. Just 10 games left in the regular season. They have slid from second to fifth place.
All right, we are about out of time. So here's my final thought on the controversy surrounding the Stephen A. Smith comments. Now, whether you agree with his take or not, calling out a city and in turn its people doesn't always work out the way you planned. Stephen A. Smith has made his money and his name by saying controversial and outlandish statements. That's just who he is, right? But the truth is, every major city has problems, some more than others. It's what those cities are doing to solve the problems that should be the focus. I would also encourage Stephen A. to take up Mayor Young on his invitation and come on down to the 901. That's the show for today. Thank you again to Tony Harris for joining us on the 24th floor. Thank you to Richard Dench and Jared Robinson and Brooklyn High for their work behind the scenes, making this thing happen. You know I couldn't have done it. Plan is to have a show on Thursday. Avery Braxton should be back in the chair. Until then, thank you for your time, and I'm out.